my sewing and knitting YouTube channel. If you're new, what I'm going to do in this video is talk about what I've been knitting this month and then what I've been sewing this month, as well as talk about my plans for this coming month. So let's get into it. Last month, what I was knitting at the time I made my video right at the beginning of the month were the soft ruffle socks, and I finished them. Here they both are. Honestly, some minor differences between the two of them. I accidentally made one ruffle a little bit too long. I honestly don't even know if the ruffle's supposed to like face up like that. I mean, I know I did it right, but I feel like I kind of wish that I made the ruffle the opposite direction. Anyway, I would say this is a relative success. They're a little bit heavyweight for me to be wearing in the summer right now. So I haven't worn them once in the real world, but I think come winter, I'll wear them a fair amount. I am kind of regretting this color choice, but I do think I will get a fair amount of wear out of them. But my big lesson about these socks, and kind of with the whole month, is that gauge really matters, which is something that I obviously knew, but I just feel like everything that I've knit this month did not come out right gauge-wise. So I don't know if it's me just not getting the fit right or if my gauge is actually wrong. I'll talk about this a little bit more on a coming project, but overall, I'm happy with these socks. They're not perfect. I made a lot of mistakes, but they were my first sock pattern. Again, that's the soft ruffle sock, and that pattern is free on Ravelry. And if I were to do them again, I would definitely go down a size, but I like them a lot and I do anticipate making them again. So in that sense, I would call these a success. That is my only finished knitting project for the month. And I had already finished one when I made the first video, so that doesn't feel very successful, but I'll explain why. This I talked about last month. I was going to be making the boxy cardigan, and here it is. It has one sleeve, and it's really cute. I know it doesn't really look like much as I wave it around like that, but it's really cool. It has this pretty ingenious design for the collar. You're looking at the wrong side right now, but as you look at the right side, everything is right side stockinette stitch. So what I'm going to say about this is I used Drops's Paris yarn, and those skeins just are not very long at all. So I ended up using way more yarn than I was supposed to, and I had to order more. So my yarn is coming in the mail, and I have a whole entire sleeve to do, and I'm gonna add length to the bottom yet. And what I'll say is that my gauge on this was just like really wrong. And I gauge swatched and it came out right, and the same thing happened with that sock. The sock was too big, this was too small. I feel a little discouraged about gauge because, like I said, when I do the swatch, it just wasn't working right. But I just know that gauge is really important and you have to be really careful, and I'm just going to like triple check because I think I was getting a little lazy about how exacting I was being when it came to my gauge. So this I'll finish up next month. I'm really proud of how much I did because cardigans, you have to knit them flat. You can't knit them in the round, and it just takes some time. I really liked this project. I really like this edging detail on the collar, and you do the same edging detail on the bottom, and I'm pretty sure on the edge of the sleeve, but haven't finished this sleeve, haven't made the other one, and then I undid my bottom because when I put it on, I was like, oh, that's way too short. And then when I measured, this is when I found out my gauge was wrong because I did the amount of rows, and then they said it's gonna be about this many inches, and then the inches were just way wrong, like way too short. So like 2 inches too short. So anyway, I decided that I want to make the cardigan longer than the pattern calls for anyway, and just waiting on my yarn to come. Okay, my next knitting project, I did not mention this in my last video. This is sweater number 21 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It is, I love it. It is this really cool stitch. And like I mentioned in my last video, I haven't done a lot of projects that aren't stockinette stitch. I've only done one project that was in fisherman's rib, and everything else has been stockinette stitch for like a year and a half. And this project taught me that it's not as scary as I thought it was to knit something that looks a little bit more complicated. So this has this really pretty, almost like honeycomb fishnet sort of stitch, and I really like it. I love these edging details here. So I can't wait to finish this one up. It's gone really fast. I've actually tried to pace myself with it because of how quickly it knits up. But this is another one where I just feel like my gauge is smaller than it was supposed to be. I just don't know what's going on. But I measured my gauge swatch even afterwards, and because I was like, maybe I got too excited and got my gauge wrong, but that's just not true. My gauge swatch was still right. So not really sure what's happening to me. Okay, the last thing I have to talk about knitting wise, not crazy exciting, but I bought this yarn to work on a project in July. It's going to be the vanilla sweater by Knit Picks. I think that's what it's, Hip Knits. It's by Hip Knits. And that's just a very, very, very simple bottom up striped sweater. I've never done a bottom up sweater, but every knitter I've ever talked to does not like them very much. So I'm not super excited about that, but I'm super pumped to use this yarn. And my plan is I'm going to do the stripes in these two colors and then the ribbing in this color. And after running out of my yarn for the boxy cardigan, I'm pretty afraid that I'm not going to have enough of this yarn, but we'll just see how it plays out. This sweater literally only calls for 7 skeins, and that just feels teeny, so I feel kind of nervous about that because it's also a sweater with a lot of positive ease. This is Drops Melody. I really only use Drops yarn because it is relatively good enough quality for what I can afford and how much I want to buy in a month yarn wise. So all the yarn that I use is Drops Melody. All the yarn that I always use is Drops, basically. The soft yarn wasn't. I bought that at my local knitting store. The yarn that I used for sweater number 21 is Drops Kid Silk, Mohair, and Drops Snow, which I really can't say enough good things about Drops Snow. It is so soft. It's a blown yarn, which I've always wanted to work with. I purposely got yarn that was going to be a little bit lighter because I wanted this to just be so soft and so light and fluffy, and Drop Snow is just kind of the perfect yarn for that. So that is it for my knitting plans. I'm really hoping that that everything that I've currently talked about will last me through all of July. That's my goal. I'm going on a 2-week vacation, which I'm super excited about, and I have never had that much time to knit without having to work, so it'll be interesting to see how much knitting I get done, but like I said, I'm really going to try to pace myself. Now is the portion of the video I will be talking about my sewing for the month and my plans for next month. So last month I sewed, I think like 10 items. It was a ton. My friend gave me a huge stash of fabric and I went wild on it, and now I am kind of burnt out on my sewing. It kind of feels like a chore, and I also just really want to dedicate myself to pushing myself a little bit harder on knitting and learn more things. So all that to say, sewing this month kind of took a back seat, but I did sew 2 garments. One of them was a huge flop and I can't wait to talk about that. And the other one was a major success. So all in all, really happy. And when I say huge flop, it's honestly not that bad, but it just always stinks when something really kind of goes wrong with sewing. You can't typically fix it as nicely as you can with knitting. So last video I talked a lot about this grasser pattern that I was very excited about. It is this like long button-up dress with big poofy sleeves, and I said I wanted to make it full length, but I didn't want to do the patch pockets or the collar, and I did the complete opposite of that. So I ended up making a buttoned up version. I made it short I did all the patches and all the pockets. So it has 2 pockets, 2 patches, and I did the collar. And I didn't talk about this last time, but Grasser, I don't think I did. Grasser, at least for this pattern, you only buy one size, which is a bummer. And for this pattern, it was weird because you go off of height. So I'm typically between like a 10 and a 12 when I sew. But for this pattern, I was the smallest size because I'm short. And this came out really small. It's supposed to be this like fun, oversized look. And this is very fitted on me. My bust is bigger than my waist measurement. So the place where it is the tightest is definitely on the bust, and it's wearable in some ways. It is too short to wear as a dress. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to style it because of it's kind of like an awkward length where it's a little long for a shirt and way too short for a dress. And also, I thought the lining wouldn't show through, and I ran out of fabric. And you see this ugly, ugly green, which the green itself is pretty, but the green plus orange makes me feel like a pumpkin, which is just not what I was going for. The sleeves feel kind of awkward to me. It's just the fit is like really not right. And I ended up having to take out a back pleat so I could get more room in the back. But I don't even think that was necessary now that I think about it, because I didn't make any adjustments on the collar, and you piece the collar and the back together. So I really think I should have left that back pleat in there. I could talk about this for a long time, but overall, it was a difficult sewing process. I thought that this pattern would be really simple, and it was not. It was pretty complicated. This fabric, I think, is really like upholstery fabric, so I very quickly was like, this is not gonna really look right because it's just not the right kind of fabric for this pattern. And I think I will wear it a few times a year. Don't really think I'm going to get more wear out of it than that. And that's okay because it was from a stash. But the reason that I ended up making this version of it and not the long version like I planned is that I just didn't have enough fabric. And honestly, I would make another one. It just was really not an enjoyable sewing process. I would definitely buy at least 2 to 4 sizes up because I just like my clothes oversized in the first place, and I just was hoping for a more oversized fit for this. I also kind of feel like a sexy nurse when I wear this. Like I feel like I'm wearing a costume, and I think it just maybe doesn't really fit my style profile. So anyway, that's enough about this. There are some things I'm really proud of. I'm still talking about it, and some things that I'm not. But I wore it once, and everybody was so complimentary of it. So I think I'm kind of in my head as well because I just don't typically wear things that are as fitted as this is on me. And like, I feel the tightness in my shoulders and in my chest, but people looking at it probably can't tell that I'm like not very comfortable wearing it. The other thing I made that I didn't talk about at all in my last video because I didn't know that I would be making it until it was happening is this dress. It is, I'll get a picture of myself wearing it and you can see, but it is the Singlet dress. I don't think that's what it's actually called, but it is from Brigitte Himlison's Zero Waste Patterns book. And I was pretty nervous to sew a zero waste pattern because I mentioned this in my last video, but I'm just not very good at being diligent about pattern drafting. So I was nervous about that, but it was actually so enjoyable, very fun. And I mean, this dress feels perfect to me. So that was a huge ego boost and motivation boost because I was pretty nervous about it. And also I sewed it after the big pumpkin dress. So I was a little nervous, but I'm so happy about this. I've already worn it twice. I'm going to the beach next week and I'll probably bring it as a cover up. It's just so cute. I see myself wearing it all year round. And I really didn't make any modifications at all. I went a size up, probably because I was petrified based on the pumpkin dress experience. Also, like I said, just because I like to wear my clothes oversized. And because I'm larger in the bust. So that is this project. I could talk about it for a really long time. I can't wait to sew. I keep looking up here because that's where I keep that book. But I can't wait to sew more of her patterns, and I just love that they're really basic blocks that you can then use really creatively. Which leads me to my last thing to talk about. My next sewing project, I spoke about this in my last video, is kind of a self-drafted Brigida mashup of one of those like sheer overlay dresses. And I will say I was very excited about this, and I've kind of crashed and burned a little bit in my excitement for it. But also I'm hosting a sewing night at the end of next month, and I'm saving this project to sew during that night. So a little bit of crash and burn, but really just being smart and waiting for the sojo to hit. So I won't talk about this a lot because I talked about it in my last video, but I'm going to use, I got my fabric. This is just a little scrap from cutting. Sorry, Brigida, it was not zero waste when I did it because I ended up with way more fabric than I needed, and I also messed up cutting the first block, which was a little frustrating. But anyway, this is the sheer fabric I'll be using. It is a sheer veil, and I love it. I'm a little nervous to sew on it just because, I mean, it's a sheer, very, very, very silky fabric. It's just going to be a bit of a challenge, but I am excited for the finished project, and I'm pretty excited to sew another Brigida Himlinson pattern. So what I'm going to do for this one, I'm using the top. It's just her like basic boxy oversized top pattern that I feel like you see everywhere. And I'm doing all French seams, another reason that I'm not wildly excited. But when I actually do French seams, I love it. It just takes me a second to remember that I love it. So, I'm going to have like huge folded up, kind of, why can't I think of the word, but on the sleeves to give kind of a stripe effect on the bottom of the sleeve, a hem, that's what I mean. So like probably 4 inches of folded up hem. And then on both the sleeves, I'm gonna bias bind the top with this fabric, wish me luck, and just do one of those gathered waists, but only gather at the sides. So I'm gonna, well, in the back. So I'm gonna have one piece that gathers around the sides and the back, and the front is just going to be a straight panel, which I'm also a little nervous about. But it's like giving me Princess Leia in the Golden Bikini vibes a little bit, but kind of backwards. But hopefully it works. I'm still gonna try it because I've been really obsessed with that look where you only gather the sides. So I'm just really hoping that it turns out, because I don't know if I can stomach another sewing flop. I'm also going to do that wider hem on the bottom as well. So those are my plans for next month. Thanks for watching.